When you get in the trenches and you spar with guys at the level we sparred at, I mean, we talking about banging. You know, sometimes people got hurt a little bit, but hey, we were brothers, and we still are to this day. And because of that kind of bond, you know, you stick together.
Hello, everyone. It's episode 112 of WhistleKick Martial Arts Radio, the only place to hear the best stories from the best martial artists, like today's guest, Kyoshi Kevin Hudson. At WhistleKick, we make the world's best sparring gear, and here on Martial Arts Radio, we bring you the best martial arts podcast. I'd like to welcome you. I'm Jeremy Lesniak, and I'm the founder here at WhistleKick, but I'm also lucky enough to be your host for Martial Arts Radio. Thank you to the returning listeners, and hello and welcome to those of you listening for the first time. If you're new to the show, or you're just not familiar with what we make, please check out our sweatshirts. Different colors and styles to choose from, but always top quality. Available at WhistleKick.com, and you can find all of our sparring gear, which is the heart of what we offer, at WhistleKick.com or at Amazon. If you want the show notes, including photos and links to everything we talk about today, you can find those at WhistleKickMartialArtsRadio.com. If you're not on the newsletter list, sign up now. We send out exclusive content, and it's the only place to find out about upcoming guests for the show. As a thank you for joining our list, we'll send you our top 10 tips for martial artists, an exclusive podcast episode. It's full of fresh content you've never heard before. So sign up for the newsletter at any of our websites. It was during the Superfoot camp in Florida in March of 2016 that I first met Kyoshi Kevin Hudson. A tall man with a southern accent and a constant smile, he quickly became one of my favorite people from the weekend. He showed himself to be a skilled and passionate martial artist, which are the two primary criteria for being invited on this show. It took a little bit of time to make the scheduling work, but it was well worth the wait. This episode is one where we hear a lot about Kyoshi Hudson's love, not just for martial arts, but for people and for life in general. It's hard not to feel good after speaking with him or listening to him, and that certainly comes through in this episode. Enjoy. Kyoshi Hudson, welcome to WhistleKick Martial Arts Radio.
Absolutely glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. It's going to be fun. You and I haven't had a lot of time to talk. We've worked out together a couple times, but I'm looking forward to getting to know you, and I'm sure all of the listeners will enjoy getting to know you.
Absolutely.
So let's get started. Same way we always start. How'd you get started in the martial arts?
Well, Jeremy, thanks for having me. As far as me starting in the martial arts, it goes back to 1979. Believe it or not, I was a little boy, 8-year-old kid, just turned 8. The year into the school, there was a kid that did a kata in a talent show in my elementary school. And also, I saw that, and it infatuated me. I was like, wow, this guy's doing something pretty cool. I was finishing up the second grade, right? And so I saw this, and it kind of inspired me. And then along with that, I said, that might be a way to keep people from picking on me if I learned karate. So I went home. I told my dad, hey, I want to start karate. There was a school in my little hometown that was in a metal building with no carpet on the floor, no heat, no air, old military-type teacher that hated everybody, I thought. And my dad went in there and said, can you take a kid? They initially said no, but then the instructor's wife intervened and said, hey, let's let this kid try to train. And so I started training, $25 a month. Dad said it'll blow over in 3 months, and that was several years, 1979 to the day. So here I am.
So you were the first child at this school?
Right. At this school, there was about 10 students. I was the first kid that jumped in there that they allowed to train. Like I said, I think because the lady, the wife of the instructor, actually, I don't know if she sensed empathy or cared or said, hey, we need to take kids. But I was the first kid. And then about 3 to 4 months later, a girl about 3 years older than me started. And then she and I were the only kids from then on that I can remember. So, yeah, I was the first kid. She was the second. And actually, she was a girl. She was 3 years older than me. She used to beat me up every day until I was about 16. And then I guess when I was 16, I started getting a little stronger and could actually do something that could stop her from coming in and wailing on me.
What was that like being a kid in an adult class as much as you remember, back in that era, because, that's kind of the tail end of what a lot of us would call the blood and guts era, and it sounds like it was that kind of a school, no carpet,
Right.
no heat, no air, I'm guessing no gear.
Right.
Probably pretty rugged classes, right?
It was really rugged. We actually brought carpet from home in pieces, and we duct taped it on the floor. So we had concrete and then tape down carpet. So that was the next step. So you got used to a little concrete, but then you got used to the tape down carpet. So that worked out well. I was a kid, I had that other lady, this little girl that started with me later. Luckily, fortunately for me, there was two 20-something-year-old guys that kind of took me under their wing. And the main instructor didn't really speak to me. In fact, 5 years after I started was the first time he actually looked at me and spoke to me as a human. And his first sentence was, "I didn't think you'd still be here." So that kind of set the tone for our relationship. But there was two guys in there that kind of took me under their wing, and daily they would bring me in and say, "Hey, I saw you had trouble with this. Let me help you out. Let's go over this kata with you. Let's go over this." So there was a couple of guys in there that really kind of took me under their wing, helped me out. The main instructor did help too, but he wasn't really interactive with me. I was just in the class. I was just a part of the group, and we went to class 4 days a week from 6 to 8 was class, and I usually got there at 5:15 and left as late as I could when Mama would come pick me up. So I guess she enjoyed having me out of the house,
So normally we don't hone in on this kind of stuff this early, but I'm guessing this is going to give us a lot of context for you as we move forward in our conversation. Here we have a class that was certainly not catered to children. You've got an instructor who I almost want to say didn't want you there.
Right.
In difficult training conditions. And despite all of that, you fully embraced it.
Yes.
How? Why? What is it about you that this clicked so well so quickly?
Well, I tell you, Jeremy, I'm very fortunate. I grew up in a household with two loving parents. I had mom and dad. They're still married, been married almost 50 years. But, for some reason, Dad said, "Hey, you can go try this." When I got into that environment, I fell in love with the structure. And the two guys I told you about, they kind of took me under their wing. And for some reason, that structure really was an environment that I thrived in. And looking back now, I think a lot of it was the big guy, the main instructor. For some reason, I was geared to try to please him. I wanted him to say, "Hey, good job." But I just tried and tried and tried. I never gave up. When you line up in class, you line up by rank. The lowest rank is always to the right of the instructor, and your goal is to move to the left till you get your black belt and get down there on that end. And for some reason, I thrived on that goal structure and trying to move down to that end. And I don't know, I was a pleaser, I guess. And the hard work and the heat and the strictness of that kind of era, it didn't faze me that much. For some reason, I was just geared that way. One of my theories is everyone needs to find their passion. And the earlier you can find that passion, the more likely you are to be a success in life. And if you can get good at that passion, getting really good at one thing helps your confidence, helps your self-esteem, just like, as a martial arts instructor, which I do today. If you can get kids to get good at one thing and feel like they're really excelling at something, then their confidence is better and they're less likely to get into trouble. And just for some reason, I fell in love with that structure. And, it's funny, the first time I ever sparred, I was an orange belt. And they had just started using the Junri equipment, the old big puffy gloves, the Junri ones.
Yeah, the yellow ones?
Yeah, the yellow ones. In fact, about everybody in the class, like in 1 month, bought a set of those yellow pads. And so I had a set of those. I put them on, and the lady, the instructor's wife, said, "I'm going to teach you to spar today." I didn't know that pretty much was a session of her hook kicking me and round kicking me in the head. That was pretty much it. She taught me how to block a hook kick and a round kick with my face for about 2 or 3 rounds. I said, "Here's what you do: hold your hands up." And but I just fell in love with it. And in fact, you may know I'm relatively flexible, and I love to kick. And kicking people in the head gives me great pleasure, kind of like Mr. Wallace. But she was the one that inspired me to be flexible and be able to do the splits and all that. She could do the split. She was the first one in class I ever saw do that. And I remember going to her one day and saying, "Hey, how did you get where you could do that?" And she said, "Stretch." And I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, stretch like I would do before class." And I said, "Well, how much?" She said, "All the time." So I literally took that to heart, and all the time I stretched. When I was at school, I would ask the teacher to go to the bathroom so I could stretch. I mean, I was a weird kid, man. But within 3 months, I got where I could do the split, all three ways. And to this day, I can still do the split all three ways. And I told my wife, when I do croak, you can put me in a casket in the split. So anyway, I thrived on that environment. I just fell in love with it, and I loved the idea of being able to, just punch and kick hard and be good at it,
Yeah. Well, clearly, as you said, you found your passion, and you found it pretty darn early in life. And that's fantastic. I think a lot of people at that age may find martial arts and find that they love martial arts. But I don't think I've talked to too many people that embraced it, as their lifestyle that early.
Right. Yeah. For some reason, God gives everybody a talent, and luckily that was mine. And I've been fortunate to make it something I do for a living. In January will be 25 years that I've owned a karate school. I actually own two. We started three, and one of my students owns the other one, but I have two, and, still kicking and punching about every day, teaching people karate and trying to find ways to improve people's life through martial arts training. That's what we do.
Yeah. I had this vision of you, as a young kid getting kicked in the face, all over, roundhouse kicked and hook kicked in the face. And, I got to admit, I think there's a pattern there for you, right?
Well,
finding Bill Wallace, because anybody that's worked with him knows that's exactly what he likes to do to people too. Right?
Absolutely. I never have gotten too spar with Mr. Wallace. Now, in 1997, I fought for my second World Kickboxing Championship in New Haven, Connecticut, actually, in the New Haven Coliseum, which you've probably been there. And I fought there, and Mr. Joe Lewis was a special guest. And that week, I got to spend the whole week with Mr. Joe Lewis. And that guy, I'd read about him. I'd read magazines about him. I had black belt magazines with him all over it. And, he was one of my heroes. Oh, man, this is Joe Lewis. And I'll never forget being in Charlotte Douglas Airport, meeting the group of people going to Connecticut. Here comes walking Joe Lewis. I'm like, wow, there's Joe Lewis. I didn't know he was coming over where I was, but he came over, and him and John Maynard and Randy Ballard and all these guys got together, and Joe introduced himself, and I tell you, he didn't say a lot of nice things in the beginning to me because Mr. Lewis is pretty critical of people right out of the gate. If you've ever met him, you know what I'm talking about, and it's sad we've lost that gentleman, but I tell you, he was the most knowledgeable martial artist I had ever met in history. Amazing. And I was very fortunate to actually spar many, many, many rounds with Mr. Lewis and work with him. Mr. Lewis quit sparring at 62, and it was funny. I'll never forget. He looked at me and said, "I've sparred enough. 62, I'm done." I said, "I hear you, man." He said, "I'm going to quit eating good, too. I'm going to start eating some junk." I said, "Well, that's cool, man." He's been eating good for 62 years. And but I worked with him for years and years, and I tell you, Mr. Wallace, meeting him later on, and as Mr. Wallace was going around the Joe Lewis convention every year, I trained with him quite a bit, through the years. And after Mr. Lewis passed, the next year I said, "Man, I got a test with Superfoot. I got to go do that because we're all not promised tomorrow, so I got to get out there and test with Mr. Wallace." And I flew down to Tampa, Florida, and tested and started training with him quite a bit. Met Terry Dow multiple times through the years, and Grant and all them guys. And I tell you, Wallace's theory and his strategy is amazing. Is amazing. It's one of those guys, when you see him and you work with him, you're like, why didn't I think of that? And if I'd have met him earlier, it might have saved me a few brain cells, because he was really good. He's really good at manipulating distance and staying away from not being in that pocket. You know what I'm saying? So it's neat to be able to work with him, and I love to kick people in the head. And if you watch any of my fights, I kicked a lot of people in the head, but I side kicked people in the belly probably more than I kicked them in the head. And Mr. Wallace did the same thing. You know, he had 13 knockouts from body side kicks. So
That's right.
Can't breathe, you can't fight, right?
That's right, right. As I've expressed to a number of people who have, you know, ended up at his seminars and felt a little frustrated at learning the material. You know, the stuff is simple, but it's not easy.
No. It's
you know,
not
the beauty is in the simplicity of the strategy. And just as you said, a lot of the things that he espouses are, you know, they're brilliant in their simplicity and so simple that most of us would miss them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But,
well, you know, he was fortunate to be put in a position where he had to come up with a strategy because of his injury. And because, you know, he was left-handed, and fortunately he hurt his right knee, so he was able to put his left side in front. And him being able to manipulate distance, and you not know that his head is coming forward, and his foot hits you before anything else hits you, that's pretty ingenious, you know? Because with most of us, we try to move forward and advance into the pocket or within range, and it's pretty easy to detect that forward momentum. So you get a good fighter out there, he knows what you're going to do when that head starts moving forward. But with Wallace and that footwork that he has, it's super difficult to detect him advancing forward. And his leg is so fast, even at his age still today. You know, I'd hate to have been kicked when he was 35 in the head by him. He's probably pretty amazing.
Yeah. I'm you know, even now at 70, and we've said this on the show several times with people that have trained with him. At 70, he can still put his foot anywhere on your body. I'm sure there are some people that are, you know, fast enough to block him now, but there aren't a lot, right? At 70 years old, he's still fast enough to put his foot wherever he wants on just about anybody's body.
Oh, absolutely. There is no doubt about that. Absolutely.
Right.
Hey, Jeremy.
And just to give...
Let me pause 1 second. I have to walk in. You got it? Hold on 1 second.
Yep.
Yeah, I know. No problem, man. Thank you. Y'all take care. Okay. See you later. Yes, sir. All right, I apologize.
Oh, no worries. So we'll come back, and I got something to say in just a couple. So for anybody that is listening and maybe hasn't had the chance to train with Bill Wallace, one of the things that you were talking about with the distance, and just to give people something that they could do, you know, we're always talking about things kind of esoterically on the show, but here's something you could actually try. Whatever stance you're in, realize that it's your planted foot, your rear leg, that is always the determinant of how close you are to your target. And so that's the big thing that Mr. Wallace works with, is not so much the front leg being the one that gets people to react, even though it's the back leg that determines distance. So a lot of the strategies are around bringing that back leg closer. So,
absolutely. That is true. Moving that back leg, the way he manipulates it, you know, his straddle leg kind of hop, kind of, you know, movement, that back leg moving forward without detection, and his head staying pretty much the same height. That changes everything, because, you know, Mr. Lewis used to say you had to control the vertical distance, the horizontal distance, and the lateral distance. And he who controls all those distances wins the fight. And Mr. Wallace is a master at manipulating that distance. So, you know, it is what it is, you know. And I tell you, I wish I'd have worked with him sooner. However, you know, it worked out like it did. And, you know, I was gifted with a chin like a trailer hitch for a while there, so I could stay in the pocket and work when I had to. And, you know, I didn't win them all, but I won a few and had a fun time with it, you know.
That's great. So we've got a pretty good idea of who you are and your passion for the arts at this point. And we just heard some kind of fun stories around meeting Joe Louis and how you got started. But I'm sure you've got a lot more stories. If I was to say, you know, what's What's your best martial arts story? What would you tell us?
Best martial arts story. Now, you got to figure, I've been in it since 1979, pretty much almost every day of my life. Trained with, some great teachers. Got to spar some great people. I used to kind of be like a Wallace. I'd travel around, and if there was a dojo, I'd stop, and I'd try to spar. And or if there was a boxing gym, I actually got a little better with my hands later on in my career. So, that was always fun to go to a good old boxing gym and get in there and, box with some guys. And, as you and I both know, you cannot judge a book by its cover. And everybody thinks they can fight until they get punched in the face. And then that changes things quite a bit. But my best martial arts story, wow, Jeremy, you put me on the spot here, man. My best martial arts.
That's what I do.
Story. That's what you do. Well, I'll tell you a little personal one. Okay, here's a little personal one. Just because it's kind of fun, and actually it's in my book that I have written that you and I discussed a little bit. When I was a young man, as I grew, I got to about 14, 15 years old. And as young men, at 14, 15, you start filling out a little bit. You start getting a little gangly. You start getting a little taller. But if you're a martial artist, you've been training since you're 7, 8 years old, at 15, 16 years old, you start learning how to rotate properly and generate a little more momentum, okay? So during this age in my life, I was sparring people in class, and I was usually hurting about everybody I sparred with just because I had zero control. And growing up in the era I grew up in, when I sparred, I always sparred an adult so you could hit them as hard as you wanted to. And, I didn't have to have control because I couldn't hurt them if I did hit them,
Right.
But when I was I think I was 14, back in years ago, people would periodically come into the dojo and want to fight somebody. And we was running, my little dojo was still running. It was the same one my instructor was at when I started. And, it had changed hands a couple of times. We had a new guy running it that grew up under that was a student under the instructor I started with. And there was this guy came in one day that was maybe mildly inebriated, but he wanted to fight. And I was a 14-year-old kid, and my instructor at the time was a pretty high-strung individual. So I remember the guy walks in, and my instructor looks at him and says, "So you want to fight? I tell you what, I'll let you fight this young kid here, and if you beat him, I'll fight you." And this is 6 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Some inebriated dude walks in the door. He was probably 6 foot, about 180. He wasn't a big, huge guy. And I was, at the time, at 14, I was probably, 5'10", about 140 maybe, 120, 140, somewhere around in there. And I'll never forget my instructor looking at me, and, we're from the South, so it's okay to say bust him. That was what he said. He looked at me and he said, "I want you to bust him." And I was like, okay. So, and this was kind of fun. I was 14, and not long before that, I had seen full contact kickboxing on ESPN. Some of the old legends, Brad Hefton, Johnny Terrio, those kind of guys. And not before, during that time, I said, well, I want to be a world champion kickboxer. And so this was time for me to get some sparring in, actually. So this inebriated dude, my instructor put some gloves on him. We got in there, and about the first 30 seconds, he come in wailing, and I hit him with a side kick in the body and aired him out just as good as you would anybody. I heard the old, "Hoo," and he folded up and hit the floor. And then they let him recover. He got back up, and my instructor looked at me again and said, I want you to bust him." And so the guy had his hands around his belly because he was scared I was going to hit him in the belly, and I hit him with a nice lead leg round kick to the neck ear region, and he went stiff and fell to the right because I kicked him with the right leg, so he fell to his right. And I'll never forget, he thumped the floor, and I just kind of stood there looking. I thought, wow, man, I saw something like that on ESPN, And so I got to be the sparring partner for this crazy person that walked in the dojo wanting to fight a martial artist. And my instructor at this point recovered the guy, got the guy up, and told the guy, he can leave, and he left, and we started class, and we had a good class. But that was kind of a funny story, just because as a 14-year-old kid, you're not used to hitting people hard with mean intent, And at that point, when your instructor says hit him hard with mean intent, that's what you do. And 120 to 40 pound 14-year-old rolling his hip over properly, with the proper flexibility and momentum, and there's nothing in the way between this person's neck and, I had my little foot pad on, but that was about it. So that's kind of a funny story of me beating up a bad guy, I guess. And it was fun for me. Wasn't fun for the other guy, but it was fun for me.
Sure. Hopefully he learned his lesson.
I hope so. I don't think he wasn't sloppy drunk, but he had been drinking, you could tell. But I think he probably remembered it when he woke up and realized something was really sore. His whole neck and head, I'm sure, was sore. And luckily I didn't break any of his ribs, I don't think, because he was turned forward when I hit him. So it might have done some internal damage, but he's probably fine. He's probably walking around today kind of laughing about it too, I guess.
Yeah. Now I'm wondering, because you went on and you did spend so much time kickboxing.
Right.
Did that experience have any influence on that? Was that really the first time you thought, oh, I really enjoy this, I want to do this?
Well, it's funny. I told you, I found my passion in martial arts early, and like I say, around 13 years old. That was, 79. I was 8. I don't know, in the mid 80s. Kickboxing was really flourishing. Joe Corley was putting on the PKA. You had guys like Rick Rufus, Terrio, Alexio, Brad Hefton out there, doing it. Jerry Rome, people like that, out there doing it, and it was on TV a lot. It was televised. Bill Wallace was, obviously there. I saw him a couple times on TV. I remember seeing Joe Louis on TV a couple of times. So these guys inspired me. And at 13, I said, hey, I'm going to be a world champion kickboxer. And that was my mission, So this guy coming into the dojo, we always sparred hard because we was one of those old schools that, at the time we didn't wear no headgear. We had a mouthpiece, but we just hit pretty hard. And usually every class somebody bled or got hurt. But when that guy come in, it was just another day of sparring. Really, it wasn't nothing too special, but it was kind of cool to be able to hit somebody that had no idea how to defend himself. That was kind of cool. I always tell people I've never had an easy kickboxing match in my entire life. The easy one I had, for some reason, this guy was. They said he was like number 8 in the world or something, and there's no way. I don't think he was. I think that was a farce, because if he's that bad at number 8, boy, I'd hate to see number 7 or 6. But I ended up fighting this guy, a 5-rounder, and I hit him with everything but the ring post, and it was my easiest kickboxing ever. And the rest of them were wars and just battles that when you come out of, for the next 6 weeks, you knew you was in a fight. That's the way it was. But yeah, I was inspired as a kid early on. I found my passion. I set my goal to be a world champion, at 13. And, hey, God gives you a passion and a mission, and that's kind of where I went.
Yeah. What do you think you'd be doing now if you'd never gotten into martial arts?
Wow, that's a good question, Jeremy. That's hard for me to get my head around, because I've never done martial arts. I've never not done martial arts. You know what I mean? That's right. All I've ever done. At age 8, I just turned 8. I turned 8 April 29th, and then when school got out in June, I was in a karate school. So from a very young age, that's all I've ever done. So for me to say, hey, what would I be doing for West Martial Arts? I do know my life would not be at the quality it is. I do know I wouldn't be in good shape, just because, martial arts is fantastic for, fitness and just flexibility and being able to handle pressure. And that's why, why it continues to be a popular activity. But, people always say, if you can find something you love to do and make a living doing it, you never work a day in your life. There's some truth to that. Even being a karate teacher, some days are kind of tough, because not everybody takes it as serious as you do, or as I do. So sometimes it kind of bums you out, because people are out there kind of flopping around, and you're trying your best to push them, and, it's tough. But, as a martial arts instructor, I do get to make a huge positive impact on my community. I try to be well looked upon by everybody in the community as somebody that contributes to the well-being of what we're doing in the community. People improving their health, their mind, their body through doing martial arts. So for me to think of not doing it, that's hard to fathom. I do have something I really found that I love. I got my pilot's license. I love to fly. Me and my father actually owned an airplane for a while, and then we sold it, and, who knows, maybe one day I'll own another one. But I tell you, flying's kind of cool. It's kind of like martial arts. You can't learn all there is to learn about it, and it takes a certain technique and a certain type of person to be good at it. So that's something I do love. I guess if I wasn't doing martial arts, I might be flying jets. Who knows?
Right on. So, of course, with so much of your life, the majority of your life being around martial arts and your life being in martial arts, you've taken a lot of lessons. You've learned a lot, not just punching and kicking, of course, but it's made you who you are. If we think about maybe a challenging time in your life,
mm-hmm.
think of one of those and how your martial arts training helped you overcome.
Well, a challenging time. Well, I can tell you a challenging time. I had a good friend, one of the two guys I told you that helped me as a child in martial arts. I grew up, and this guy helped me pretty much from age 8 on. His name was Eddie, and we were buddies. He actually was a corner man a lot of my fights. He would go with me, and he was the guy that held the ice pack on my neck, and he was a big help, and one of my tough times in life was Eddie and I. We traveled all over kickboxing. I'll never forget one time we tried to check into a hotel, and we went to check in, and the promoter had set us up a room, and the lady behind the counter said, "Y'all must be one of those kickbackers," and we were like, "What?" And it was just funny. But anyway, Eddie told me we was going to eat lunch one day, and I said, okay. And then the next, that night, he called me, or that night, his neighbor called me and said he had passed away out on a jog. He went for a jog, passed away. He's 45 years old. And, that was tough, okay, because Eddie used to come to the dojo every night because we trained every night at a certain time. We'd go run, we'd come back, we'd hit the bag, we'd spar, he'd hold the pads. He was a big instrumental part of my life as a kid all the way up to when I was really competitive. And, for him, he and I have such a close relationship. And then, he said, hey, we're going to eat lunch, which we did a lot. We ate lunch a lot of times. And that day, he called me and said, hey, man, I can't eat today. I got a meeting at work. I got to do. Let me call you back tomorrow. Let's do it tomorrow. I said, okay. And he died that night. So that was a super, super hard thing to get through. But because I knew Eddie and because we both were into martial arts, we both understood that bad things happen. And we had been through this together. We talked about this before. Bad things happen to good people, and hey, we don't know why. We just got to continue to push forward and push toward the mark of our high calling, not worry about what's going on around us. And because Eddie had passed, we knew that he was in a better place, and his time had expired here. But he did a lot of good while it was here. And because of our martial arts training, and because I could go and I could work out, I could hit the heavy bag, I could do my kata, I could do something to remember Eddie, that helped me get through that grieving period. And I understand that, hey, he was my buddy, and he's not here anymore, but he's not gone away. He's just gone for a little while. And so being a martial artist helped me and the people around me that knew me get through that. It's okay for a martial artist to cry when they lose a friend. And, we lost Joe Lewis in 2012, and went to his funeral. And I've been to several funerals of people that I've lost, but because, we all, we know it's going to happen, but, the training and the discipline and the structure that goes along with it helps you deal with that kind of trauma and many other types of trauma. So that's kind of how it helped. So we're still kicking, and Eddie now looks down and actually knows that I'm still kicking, and that's the main thing.
That's right. Now, other than Eddie, and I want to take out your original instructor, the one that you started with when you were so young, who would you say has been the most influential? Tell us about somebody that, was really pivotal in your martial arts career, your upbringing.
Well, Well, there's been several, Jeremy. I mean, as a young man, I think through life, the pivotal person changes. Every let's say 8 to 10 years, and you can probably look back at your life at instructors that you've worked with, and you're probably not working with the same instructor you did when you started, because either you outgrew that instructor, or that instructor maybe quit teaching, or something catastrophic happened. So,
Right.
Would you agree that sometimes we go through different people and different mentors as we age and as we progress?
Oh, absolutely.
So I guess during my time periods, and you can look at probably 3.5 decades of me doing martial arts, I'd say the first decade was my first instructor, and the gentleman named Eddie I mentioned, and one other gentleman named Ray Rice, who was one of the only kickboxers in this area that actually made a name for himself. He fought Johnny Superfoot Davis. He fought a lot of the tough guys back in the first beginnings of kickboxing. So I used to go train with him quite a bit and spar and work out. And he promoted probably 3 or 4, well, maybe more than that, of my first matches as a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid when I'd go fight. So I'd say, Ray Rice was another guy. And then as I started training, pivotal people in my life, obviously Joe Louis, Bill Wallace, they're pivotal in everybody's career if they're martial artists and they're serious. But a couple other guys that helped me hugely, Randy Ballard and Dale Sunshine Fry, and Ronnie Copeland. Dale Fry is world lightweight champion, defending his title, I think, 8 times. He lost to Paul Vizio at Atlantic City. Me and Dale used to spar hundreds of rounds, and Dale was a lightweight, and I was a cruiserweight, and Dale hit hard as a truck, even at 135 pounds. But his demeanor and his attitude and his ability to teach the fight game and let you understand that the fight game is 90% mental was huge in my life. Randy Ballard was our coach. We used to train out of Greenville, North Carolina, up in where East Carolina University is. There was a gym up there called the Bimjo Kickboxing Gym. John Ormsby and Bill McDonald ran it. They had 4 world champions, and you may not even know these guys, but they had Demetrius Oaktree Edwards. You ever heard of him?
I have.
Okay, Oaktree came out of that gym. Curtis Crandall came out of that gym. Dale Sunshine Fry came out of that gym. And then Kevin Hurricane Hudson, which is me, and Ronnie the Kid Copeland came out of that gym. We all went up there and started training. We used to train up there quite a bit together. And it was a hardwood floor, and you go in there and just spar. And I got to do a lot of rounds with those kind of guys. And then over in Wilmington, there's a gentleman named John Maynard. Do you know Maynard, Jeremy? Have you met Mr. Maynard?
I have, yeah.
Okay, John Maynard is probably the deadliest man on the planet at this point in time. And the reason I say that is because he's one of only, I think, 3 people to have a black belt under Joe Louis, Bill Wallace, and Chuck Norris. I currently have rank under Joe Louis and Bill Wallace. I'm missing Mr. Norris, but Norris is a nice guy. He's just not giving out ranks anymore. But let me tell you, John Maynard was hugely instrumental as well, helping me kind of grow. And, I had a lot of good pedigree through the years, and guys that just get together and, spar and have good times and, just grow as martial artists. And when you get in the trenches and you spar with guys at the level we sparred at, I mean, we talking about banging. And, sometimes people got hurt a little bit, but hey, we were brothers, and we still are to this day. And because of that kind of bond, you stick together. And, even now, I remember when Mr. Lewis was alive, periodically he would call me and he would talk about somebody that maybe he had met. And then Mr. Lewis was always in the conversation with, hey, but Kevin, can he fight? That's what he wanted to know. Can he fight? And I always would tell Mr. Lewis about the person, could he fight or not? And Mr. Lewis would say, okay, that's what I need to know. And you can equate somebody's character with the fact that if they can fight or not. Because if they're a good fighter and they can take a punch when things are down, their character's probably pretty solid. And so that was something unique, that we did. And those guys that I trained with, the Maynards and the Dale Frys and people, if I called them up today and said, I need some help, they'd help me, I guarantee you. And I'd do the same for them. So those are the pivotal guys in my life. And I'm sure there'll be more as I live and grow. And, hopefully I'll get to meet new people, just like you, and Terry Dow. I used to think I could kick, but when I met Terry Dow, I was like, hey, that guy can kick.
he certainly can kick. And, of course, Terry Dow's been on the show, and we'll link to his episode and the Bill Wallace episode in the show notes. And for anyone that's new, WhistleKickMartialArtsRadio.com is the website.
Right.
And, it's only because, and here's a little bit of a tangent. It is only because Terry Dow lives 2 hours south of me that we're having this conversation right now.
Absolutely.
I mean, I might have, gotten to you at some point, but it's because of that relationship that I got to know Mr. Wallace in the way that I did, that I got to earn my black belt, that brought me to Florida in March, where we met and we trained.
Right, absolutely.
So, had any of, without those pieces lined up in that way, this wouldn't have happened. So I always find those things kind of fun. And yeah, he's an incredible kicker, and certainly someone who belongs with Mr. Wallace.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Him and Grant are both amazing kickers. Amazing.
Yeah.
So, I think in history of my life, watching people kick and their strategy as far as how they use kicks to manipulate distance, and as fighters, obviously Bill Super Wallace, but Terry Dow, is probably the next one. That's a bad dude. He might not be able to kick. To me, he's not as hard of a kicker, but he's an accurate, fast, strategic kicker, and that's pretty amazing. I've been kicked hard by kickers, but the strategy and the speed of kicking is something that Terry Dow has mastered because of Bill Wallace, obviously.
Right. Well, and if you took the power that Mr. Wallace is able to generate and you scaled that up to Terry's size and coupled that with his accuracy, he'd be kicking people in half. So it's probably good for the martial arts world that he is not he's not known in that way, because we might not be here right now.
Oh, absolutely, and that's like Grant Campbell. I'm sure you met Grant. Golly, man, you look at this mild-mannered individual, and then they let him teach you something, and you're like, wow, this guy's amazing. And it's just like Terry Dow, when you meet Terry, you're like, it's kind of a neat little guy, a young guy, then you watch him actually do his deal, and you're like, wow, this guy's amazing,
Yeah, he's phenomenal. We've tried to have him on the show, and it's fallen through. But if you're out there, Grant, still want to have you on the show.
Oh, I'm sure he's out there. He's probably eating a hamburger with Bill Wallace somewhere. Probably what he's doing right now.
So let's talk about competition. Obviously, we know that you've enjoyed competing. You enjoy kicking people in the head. But what is it about competing that speaks to you? What is it you like about that side of the martial arts?
Well, as a young man, for some reason, when we sparred in class, we usually called a winner, and we didn't do a lot of point fighting per se. We did some, but we did more of the, I guess you would say, continuous contact. So similar to a kickboxer, but was not full contact, but maybe medium contact. So, it was always, to me, to be called the winner. That made you feel good. That was really cool. I was just drawn to that competition, and that the spirit, the people yelling, the crowd screaming, the high that you get, the adrenaline dump that you get when you're in the middle of that ring, and things are going your way. It's really cool, and that really was a something that I miss because I don't compete like that anymore. And there may be other competitions, that I participate in. I haven't really, I've been doing a little jiu-jitsu lately, but I haven't taken a step to go compete in jiu-jitsu. And I get tired on the ground, Jeremy. I get tired. I can stand up and spar all day long, but my goal is to stay standing, And but I enjoy that. The competition, like I say, I haven't taken a step to go compete in a grappling tournament yet, but who knows, maybe one day. But I know actually when you're in the ring and you're actually doing the deal and you feeding the boys some good work, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And hey, I've been in the ring when things weren't going my way, and you aren't taking a knee and you sitting on a mat, you kneel down on a mat and the ref's about number 4, and you're thinking, man, I don't know if this is going too good. I need to regroup here. And, you get up and you kind of regroup and start over. And, I even enjoyed that side looking back, because when I was on a knee on the mat and there was a guy in the neutral corner who had just fed me a right hand, that taught me a lot about myself, as a person. And it's just like going to battle in any kind of battle. It's not always going to go your way. And so competition, I think, helps people understand that when things don't go your way, you can't just throw the towel in, because that ain't the way life works. and the rest sometimes might be counting, but you got 10 seconds to get to your feet. Well, 8 before he counts you out, but you got 8 to get up, and you got to prove that you can move forward. And that's the bottom line. And I think competition, for some reason, that clicked with me, that no matter how bad it got, I got to continue moving forward. And that's what I did. And I won some cool stuff, met some cool people. It made me who I was and who I am today. And as a fighter, being a fighter at the level I was at there one time, being the best at anything at one point in your life is something that changes you forever. And that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And you don't even have to be a noted world champion. Being the best at something you can do. I mean, it could be basket weaving. If you're the best and you're really good at it, it changes everything. I went and taught a seminar last weekend about 4 hours from here at the gentleman's school that I know. And, it does a lot to be able to show people fighting, and their eyes light up. They're like, wow, this is awesome, And, I drove 4 hours, taught, had some fun, but to be able to do that now, that kind of takes the place of the competition high, So when it's kind of the wizard from afar, Jeremy, if you said, hey, I'm going to pay you to come up here and teach at my karate school, and I did that, people would appreciate me greatly, because I'm coming from afar. They don't know who I am or nothing, so it's kind of cool. But, now here in my own dojo, people are like, here we are again, But right. When I go to somebody else's school, like last weekend, a gentleman named Leon Nelson, awesome martial artist, he's one of the guys, he's hoping to test for his Joe Louis fighting system black belt this year, and he invited me up and let me in his school, let me teach his students, and he had a lot of people come from outside. That adrenaline rush was great, because it kind of, that way it don't make you want to get back in the ring again, I actually, every once in a while, I'll watch Glory or something. I'll be like, that guy, I think I could whoop him. But then I'm called back to reality, and one of my old buddies says, "Hey, let's don't think about that."
Oh, good times. So, you've dropped some big names. I mean, with the exception of Chuck Norris. I mean, you've trained with two of not just the greatest martial artists of recent time, but I would venture of all time, and to befriend them and earn rank under them is no small accomplishment. But if you could train with someone that you haven't, and be they alive or dead,
right?
Who would you want to train with?
Alive or dead? Well, it was funny. I didn't train with Mr. Norris, but I got to eat dinner with him. Me and my brother fought in the World Combat League, a time or two. So, super guy. Being around him some and seeing his demeanor, he is Walker, Texas Ranger. That's who he is.
Really?
Yeah, that's his demeanor. Super nice guy. I'll never forget, I walked, we was in one of his buildings downtown Dallas. I walked by and he grabbed me by the arm. He said, "Hey, I'm Chuck. How you doing?" like I didn't know who he was, and super guy. But I mean, as far that's my little Chuck Norris story, so that's pretty cool. But as far as training with someone, I trained with Mr. Joe Louis quite a bit, and he trained with Bruce Lee quite a bit. Okay. In fact, he trained Bruce Lee a lot. In the beginning, he did not want to learn from Bruce Lee. In his mind, he was thinking, what could this 135-pound Chinese guy teach me, because Louis was a strapping buck, 190-pound rock that was a phenom that could kick you through a wall with it, break you in half with a side kick, So in the beginning, he didn't want Bruce to teach him, but later on, they became buddies. They started working together. So training with Joe Louis was almost like training Bruce Lee. Because if you've read any of Bruce's stuff, any of the Tao Ji Can Do or any of the books that Bruce wrote, a lot of the concepts Louis used in his fighting strategies. So it's really neat. So I don't think Bruce Lee would be my guy. I would like him to go back to the old school, back when Gichin Funakoshi was doing martial arts, and some of those guys in Okinawa. That might be fun to do, just because of the tradition and how I was just stricken with the love for that tradition and that structure and kneeling and bowing every class and not speaking and just being really disciplined in your class. So I would probably say go back to the Funakoshi days, back in Okinawa, old school, real old school. We're talking 20s and 30s, and train with Funakoshi and some of his early students. I did get to train with Nishiyama one time at a seminar. And I don't know how old Nishiyama was at the time. He was probably in his 70s. But I tell you, that was pretty amazing. That was pretty amazing. To watch a guy do a kata, Heian Shodan. That's what he did. And I know he's in his 70s at the time, but for him to do that kata and just be totally amazing blowed my mind. I was like, wow. Yeah. So I guess Funakoshi would be one. And, it's funny. I was actually in Cincinnati, Ohio a couple weeks ago at a retail show kind of promoting my book. And a guy came up to me and he saw my Shotokan patch on my gi. I had my gi on because, hey, I'm a karate guy, I was promoting my book, so I had my gi on. And this older fella came up to me. He said, hey, I know Shotokan karate. I trained from 71 to 2000 or 71 to 94. He gave me some years. He said, about 20 years with Hidetaka Nishiyama. Do you know him? And I was like, yeah, And so that kind of camaraderie, when you meet guys that train with the real deal, It's kind of cool, We had a conversation. My wife finally was like, y'all got to stop. We got to go, And but it was really neat to have that kind of bond with people. And so, yeah, I would say I'd like to go back in the old days, some of the old school guys, maybe in the 20s and 30s in Okinawa. I know Lewis and Wallace both trained in Okinawa in the early 60s, so I would like to go even pre-Lewis Wallace days in Okinawa and see what it was like,
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of amazing people coming out of that era and out of that location. And I think a lot of it goes back to the attitude and the structure that you brought up at the beginning.
Oh, yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Lewis told me years ago, he was a GI, and they didn't like GIs. The normal local students in Okinawa didn't like GIs because they took the attention from the teacher. And Lewis said, but when I started breaking people in half with my sidekick, they started watching me. And so he finally ended up getting his black belt. I think in 8 months he got his black belt in Okinawa, and that's because he was able to hone one technique to the point to where he could whoop anybody with it. He could hurt any student that was there with that sidekick, and that was an amazing thing. That's how he got his black belt. So
we've had a couple people on the show who have talked about being folded in half by Joe Lewis's sidekick.
Oh yeah. Exactly, man. It's funny. The first time I sparred Lewis, I remember asking Randy Ballard one time. I said, "Hey, how you think I'll do with him?" He said, "Well, you do okay." He said, "Just don't let him get you on the ground. He's actually a better grappler than he is a stand-up guy." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "But watch out. He's gonna try to kick you with that Bruce Lee sidekick." I said, "He ain't gonna try that." And dang, we got in the ring and he tried that. and luckily I blocked that one, and then the next thing I knew, he hit me with a jab that felt like a telephone pole being shot out of a cannon. I mean, it was the darndest thing I ever seen. So yeah, he had a sidekick that would cut you in half, and he did hit me with a sidekick later, but not that first one. So not that first one.
So let's talk about movies. Are you at all a movie guy? Like martial arts movies?
Yeah. It's funny. The first martial arts movie I ever watched was Game of Death, and I went to an indoor theater back. It was probably 1979 or 80, whenever it came out. when Bruce was gone, and that was the first martial arts movie I ever saw. So yeah, I watched a lot of martial arts movies, as I grew up. I mean, here lately in the last 5 years or so, being a parent, dad, 3 kids, business, it's hard to find time to sit and watch a movie, but it's like a mini vacation, so it's good to watch a movie once in a while.
Game of Death's certainly a classic. Do you have a favorite though?
Favorite martial arts movie? Man, I'm gonna have to go with Bloodsport.
Yeah.
It's hard to. Big Bolo. Enter the Dragon and Bloodsport, because of Bolo. That's probably my 2 favorites.
Talk about being typecast, right?
Yeah, boy, he couldn't get away from it, could he?
No.
Well, when you're a 250-pound Korean fella, it's hard to get away from being typecast, right?
He played that role well, regardless of the movie he was in.
Oh, he did good. He did good. I actually saw a picture of him and Van Damme not long ago, and he's aged, but he's still out there. So,
do you have a favorite actor?
Favorite actor? I tell you, probably my favorite actor back in the day would be Kevin Costner. Just because that guy could do it, he could do the deal. And
how about a favorite martial arts actor? Sorry, I didn't hone you in on that.
You didn't hone me in. Martial arts actor. That's a tough one, Jeremy. Martial arts actor. I mean,
is it? There's and that's why I pin people down.
Yeah, if you're going back to the B-rated kind of karate movies, you could pick a few. I mean, I tell you, probably the greatest martial arts role, I think, as far in the last, in this last 3 decades, I don't know, would probably be Pat Morita in the Karate Kid trilogy. Pat Morita, he was kind of a martial artist, but he played a great role. I mean, just being the teacher, man, that was pretty cool. As far as actually fighting and being a good martial artist on screen, that's a tough one, man. I guess maybe I hadn't kept up. I mean, I watched every Bruce Lee movie he ever made, so I would have to say Bruce Lee was the best fighter on screen, period. And obviously, Mr. Lewis said, he could actually hold his weight. He wasn't just a movie guy. He could get it done if you had to. So it's really neat to be able to talk with a guy that trained with Bruce Lee and said, hey, he wasn't all fluff. He could really fight if he had to. I mean, he knew the stuff. So, being able to know that Bruce Lee would actually get down to scrimmage if he had to, that's pretty cool to know,
Absolutely. Without a doubt. How about books? Now, you've certainly written a book, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But if you've written a book, I'm guessing you're a reader.
Absolutely.
So are there any martial arts books that speak to you?
Probably Joe Heim, Zen and the Martial Arts. That was kind of a revolutionizing book for me back in the day. I mean, it's an old book. I mean, you probably read it. I mean, it was a good one. Joe Louis has written numerous fighting books, obviously. Joe Louis's manual is ingenious. If you don't have his manual, I think they charge about $100 for it now, but it is ingenious. I mean, there's more knowledge there about fighting than could ever be placed on written paper. I mean, it's amazing. As far as Karate Do My Way of Life, the biography of Funakoshi is really good. If you're into the structure and the tradition. I am a voracious reader, just because readers are leaders. You got to be able to read, man. I mean, that's the bottom line. What did they say? The only difference between you now and you 5 years from now are the people you hang out with and the books you read.
Yeah.
So you got to read. I'm reading Liberator right now about World War II, and just the atrocities that those guys had to go through to liberate Europe. That's really interesting to me right now. But yeah, I read all the time. As far as martial arts books, I would say the biography by Funakoshi is fantastic. The Joe Heim book is really good. In fact, in the back of Karate Do Kyohan, the master text, there's a maxims for the trainees section, which Funakoshi wrote, which is really, really good for the martial artist. So, that's kind of, I mean, there's millions of other books. I got a big library, and You know, even if I hadn't read them all, it makes me feel smarter to walk in and look at it, you know?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So as we start to wind down here, let's talk about your goals. I mean, you're still doing it, right? I mean, you're still training, you're still teaching. Now you're writing books. What's keeping you going? What's motivating you for all this?
Well, I tell you, number one, the longevity of people like Bill Superfoot Wallace. Watching him and seeing his genuine care for people and the care for people learning and being good at martial arts, that inspires me because, you know, he's 71 now and kicking as good as 99.9% of the people out there are better. There's only two people that can kick as good as him, Grant and Terry, and I might be close. but that inspires me. The book thing is kind of, I think, you know, kickboxing was a sport that started really doing well and flourishing, and then some bad things happened to it, maybe some bad promoters, some bad things went business-wise. So it kind of hurt the sport. So when I won my first world championship, it was a Karate International Council of Kickboxing. It was a kick world title in 1994, a 12-round decision against Neil Singleton. Singleton was an awesome little fighter. He had a record like 37-18. But when I accomplished that feat, and then I did it again under another little smaller organization, kickboxing didn't have the notoriety or the fame in the 94, 95 time because MMA, NHB, and all was starting to hit, you know? So I didn't fulfill the dream as I thought it was going to happen. So hence came the book in my head. You know, I missed the mark on being a world champion. It didn't bring all the fame, the notoriety, or whatever I thought it was going to bring at the time. So, you know, now what motivates me is, number one, you know, teaching these people, still teaching. I'm doing more seminars now, which is really cool because I get paid probably more than I did when I fought, and I don't get anybody to punch me in the face.
Right.
So that's pretty cool. I'm doing that. I'm actually doing some speaking gigs now with the book. So that's kind of fun. I've actually joined the Toastmaster organization, and it's kind of cool to get speaking training without having to pay a fortune for it. So that's kind of cool. What motivates me now is number one, making a positive difference in people's lives through martial arts. And my book is an extension of that because it is based about my life, you know, based around my life. So that's what motivates me. Obviously, hey, I got 3 kids. I got to feed those guys. So that motivates me too. But, you know, teaching and even still sparring a little bit. I get a kick out of being able to get in there and spar and actually be able to kick pretty much everybody I spar in the head at least once. So that gives me a kick, and I enjoy it. But hey, you know, you and I and people like us have been given a gift that very few people enjoy, and it is martial arts and martial arts training. And we can use it to improve people's lives, and that's what you're doing with WhistleKick and with your podcast, and that's what I'm doing, my teaching, my seminar, my speaking. So yeah, we got to make a difference. It might not be universe denting material, but it does make a difference in a few people.
Wow, absolutely. I could not agree more. So now, kind of your time. Tell us about this book. Tell us about these seminars. If somebody wants to book you, they want to get a hold of you. Tell us all that.
Oh, well, hey, commercial time. All right. Well, you know what they say. Steve LaValle used to say, ABP, always be promoting, right, Jeremy?
That's right.
Well, believe it or not, I've written a book. I've been hit in the head numerous times, but I still got enough brain cells to string a few sentences together. It's a 176-page book based on my life and my journey as a martial artist, fighter, competitor, champion, dad, husband, whatever, and some takeaways that I've learned through my life. I have intermittently throughout the book, I have what I call surefire strategies. And Jeremy, I have 47 surefire strategies in the back of the book that if anyone will implement one, all, or some of these strategies, it'll improve their life. So my book is kind of a self-help, Christian-based book on personal growth and personal development. Surefire strategy number 1 is find your passion, and you could have guessed that one probably. But number 47 is watch the Andy Griffith Show. And a little story about the book. It took me 8 months to write it. I dedicated 10 p.m. to 12 midnight, 4 nights a week to writing the book. And I did that for 8 months, and it just spilled out, and it turned out to be about 47,000 words. No outline, just spilling it out. And I got it done 8 months, and then I didn't want to go the self-pub route. Because there's still a little stigma with self-publishing, which, there's nothing wrong with self-publishing. I know, a lot of people, what's the guy's name?
Guy Kawasaki?
Yeah. I mean, he makes millions self-publishing his books, obviously. There's a lot of other people that do self-pub, but I wanted more of a traditional deal. But in today's world, Jeremy, you have to be Ben Carson to get a traditional deal. And but I pitched mine to 44 publishers, got turned down 31 times. The rest of them I didn't hear from. I did find a literary agent in Pennsylvania who loved it and said, man, I want to get you a deal. And I got a deal with a smaller publisher in Mobile, Alabama named Evergreen Press. And they put it together, and I tell you, I'm really proud of it. It turned out nice. It turned out to be a good piece. You can get it at any bookstore because it is on the big distributor list, Ingram, which is wherever big stores buy their books. And it's called You Can Hit the Mark, Discover How Persistence Overcomes Natural Talent. And I tell you, Jim, what I found in life and in martial arts is a lot of times the naturally gifted guys, sometimes they don't have the heart to push through. And you got to make sure that, even if you got all these gifts, you got to have the will and you got to have the perseverance to stick it out, because it's not always going to be easy. And just like with my life, like I said, I had a chin like a trailer hitch, and I didn't want to rely on that all the time, but it's good to know you got it if you need to use it, And but the book is kind of an extension of my martial arts class, and I've actually got some good feedback from people, young and old, men and women, that really enjoyed it. I had a guy tell me yesterday that I should be a writer for a living instead of a karate teacher. And I told him, well, I got one book in me. I don't know if I got another one. Writing a book's pretty painful.
Yeah, a lot of work.
You know how it is. But
I do.
But yeah, the book turned out really nice. I was in Cincinnati, like I said earlier, promoting it at a international Christian retailer show, because it is a Christian-based book. And it was really neat. I gave away a bunch of books. I actually had email from a publisher the other day that a publisher in Nigeria is looking to translate it and sell it in Nigeria. And I'm like, wow. Cool. I'm not going to go to Nigeria, though. I hear it's pretty dangerous there. So.
Yeah, I don't think that's a place you want to go. I don't think all the dangers there happen in a ring.
No,
I don't think they're going to square off with you.
Well, it's hard to block bullets. It's hard to block.
It is.
Once they're released from the weapon, you can't do anything about it. So, but yeah, the books was a passion of mine, and I'm excited, to have it turn out so nice. And hey, I'm actually going to send you one. I meant to get your address earlier, and I wanted to send you one as a gift, just because.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
you could. I think you might enjoy it, just because there is stories about Joe Louis in here, and there's a picture of me and Mr. Wallace, and it's something, especially martial artists, they'll get a lot out of it. I actually written an article that was published in Black Belt Magazine in July last year of 2015 about Mr. Louis, and there's an article on blackbeltmag.org right now that I've written about my takeaways from the last Bill Wallace seminar that I hosted here at my dojo. So the editor of Black Belt, Mr. Young, he does amazing things for the martial arts community, and it's really neat to kind of build a relationship with him, and he'll actually look at my stuff now and read it before he says no. And I know he does that because his assistant says, yeah, he actually read it. And then 2 weeks later, I get an email, it's too conversational for the magazine, but let's put it on the website, So anyway, but writing's kind of a fun thing for me. I don't know, for some reason, I started writing and started really enjoying it, and doing it is kind of I guess, therapy in a certain way. Yeah. And you can probably relate. I'm doing these interviews and things. I'm sure it is kind of therapy for you, because you get to learn, and it's all with good people, and other than me, and see what Friday's all about.
Oh, stop! Hey, what is better than the only thing better than getting to talk to a bunch of people like yourself, wonderful martial artists, is getting the chance to train with a bunch of great martial artists. And
absolutely.
Because of this show, because I've talked to so many, I've had these phenomenal opportunities. Like we talked about, like the strange route that brought me to meeting you.
Oh, absolutely.
And I've just been so fortunate to have that and have this company and to do this show. And I'm blessed. I truly am.
Absolutely, man. Hey, every day above ground's a great day, man. And we are blessed and highly favored to live in the United States, and the greatest country in the world, no matter what. And so we gotta keep pushing forward, and that's one reason we got to keep training so we can be fit and ready to defend our values in case we have to. So.
Right. Now, of course, all the things that you mentioned, we'll have links to all those over on the show notes page at WhistleKickMartialArtsRadio.com.
Yeah.
And is there anything else you want to mention before I give you the last question?
Well, no, I don't guess. You gave me an opportunity to talk about my book. You can
Sure.
get it on Amazon. You can go to a bookstore and order it, whatever. I mean, fire your last question, Jeremy. It's been a blast, man, and I've enjoyed speaking with you.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun. And, of course, we try to go out on the highest of high notes.
All right.
Give us some parting advice for everybody listening.
Parting advice. Here's my parting advice. In fact, Dale Sunshine Fry actually told me this advice many a times through the years. Well, here's the advice. Keep your hands up, keep your chin down, and keep your body sideways, and keep moving forward. That's the bottom line. That's the way it works, man. There can't be no quitting your game because your defense is not going to be 100% all the time. So you got to keep your hands up, body sideways, and chin down. If you do that, that alleviates a lot of the problems.
Thank you for listening to episode 112 of WhistleKick Martial Arts Radio, and thank you to Kyoshi Hudson. Over at WhistleKickMartialArtsRadio.com, you can find links to Kyoshi's book and some other websites that we talked about on today's interview. If you know someone that would be a great interview for the show, please fill out the form at WhistleKickMartialArtsRadio.com, or if you want to shoot us a message with a suggestion for a Thursday show or some other feedback, there's a place to do that as well. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram. And the username is, you guessed it, WhistleKick. If you like the show, please be sure you're subscribing or using one of the free apps. For those of you kind enough to leave us a review, remember, we randomly check out the podcast review sites. iTunes is where most of you seem to be leaving those reviews, so we check there the most. And if we mention it on the air, go ahead, email us. We're going to send you a free pack of WhistleKick stuff with a t-shirt and some other great things. And remember the products you can find at WhistleKick.com or on Amazon, like our sweatshirts and our sparring gear. If you're a school owner or team coach, check out wholesale.whistlekick.com, which has just been revamped for our discounted wholesale program. We'll be back soon, but until next time, train hard, smile, and have a great day.